right. Well, thanks very much for having me today, everybody. I'm so very excited to meet you, and I'm super excited to chat with you all about AI for commercial real estate and hopefully some ways that you can actually use it. And so just to kind of set the stage a little bit and so you guys know, typically I'm giving these presentations to, brokerages, asset management groups, property management groups. And so it is fairly dialed into, kind of specific commercial real estate use cases. But I do have, a handful of ways that I've used it for kind of more financial activities. And so we're going to do some of those demonstrations too. They are going to be live because I don't have that content typically pre-recorded. So it might be a little bumpier than my typical presentation, but I think we'll be able to show you folks some really cool, useful stuff. So let's see, for some reason I'm not going, here we go. So just in case you're wondering, who is this guy and what makes him qualified to talk about AI and commercial real estate? That's what I look like without a mustache. I do need to update this photo, but as was just mentioned, I'm head of operations at Aspire Commercial. I was brought on there to, essentially help kind of systematize and scale up a startup commercial real estate brokerage by, not just using technology, also by, leveraging and working with people. But essentially we were 9 people 9 months ago, and now we're 18 and we are looking to grow. So if you happen to know anybody in the Houston area that is, looking to work with a forward-thinking commercial real estate brokerage, we're taking on clients and we are recruiting. So feel free to reach out to us if that's the case. Prior to that, I was managing director, started out as VP of Ops and Marketing, but eventually became managing director of the Bolus Company, which is the largest commercial real estate brokerage in northern New England. So I'm sure Jackie was mentally fact-checking my intro when she heard largest commercial brokerage. It's not the largest in New England as a whole, but in northern New England, when you consider, New Hampshire and Maine, we were the largest up there. And so essentially, I've spent over a decade in commercial real estate across a variety of positions. Kind of started out firstly doing like property specific marketing direction for assets across the country for kind of an asset management / family office firm that just kind of operated everywhere. Eventually shifted into more of the deal making side, in-house sales and leasing. Eventually I was recruited to help, manage, operate and scale brokerages. But a key piece of my role, just kind of throughout my career in commercial real estate, has always just been staying ahead of the curve with technology that can be applied to commercial real estate and solving everyday commercial real estate problems using that technology. So that's what we'll be diving into. So AI in business, AI in commercial real estate, why should we actually care about this stuff? I could probably give a whole presentation just on why you should care or at least be interested in AI as it pertains to business and commercial real estate. But to me, it all kind of boils down to the third bullet point here. It's already here. We're no longer talking about some distant technological phenomenon that's coming a couple of years down the pike. These tools are here. They're rippling out across industries. People are finding, miraculous ways to use them. And it's happening very, very fast. And in fact, this is kind of good for you folks, bad for me. It's happening so fast that anytime I do one of these presentations, I'm doing at least 30% of it from scratch because these new tools are rolling out and there's new features rolling out and different ways that you can leverage them, not just in commercial real estate, but, in finance or really across any business. So here's just kind of a handful of things that have been changing as it pertains to AI and how you can use it in commercial real estate just fairly recently. So the first topic I typically like to cover is AI-powered search. So just out of curiosity, has anyone on this call used a tool called Perplexity? Has anybody in this call used that before? Jackie, awesome. What? I don't know if you could unmute yourself, but what do you think of it?
I like it. I use AI, what is it? Perplexity.ai/financial to look up different companies. Yeah. I think it's pretty good. It's at least a starting point. If not, if you want to kind of go the next step, shoot, I just really lost it. There's another software you can kind of use that's got a little bit more detail to it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great summary. There is Perplexity Finance, which is a whole kind of subsection of Perplexity specifically for financial tasks. But, when I think of Perplexity, I think of AI that's purpose built for searching the internet. And when you think of something like ChatGPT, it's pretty good for searching the internet, but ChatGPT is like an AI utility built. It's built to do many different things. It's built to be creative and do creative writing, and that also means it can make some stuff up. And so even though it can search the internet, Perplexity is kind of purpose built for just kind of scraping the internet for the different kinds of information that you're looking for and providing you detailed responses to your questions with sources that you can actually click into so that you can fact check that information. And so in this particular example, this is a very commercial real estate specific example, but I just asked it, what are the typical price per square foot rents for industrial real estate in Portland, Maine? And it was able to scrape different news articles. It actually scraped my former company's market report, and it scraped a bunch of our different competitors' market reports. It was able to combine and synthesize all that information and give me a very accurate answer to loop me in quickly on what lease rates are in the city of Portland, Maine for industrial real estate. And so there's a lot of different ways that you could potentially use Perplexity, not just in real estate, but really across any industry. In this particular example, I was recently giving an in-person presentation at a place called the Fourth Hotel in Atlanta, and I was just curious to see who actually owns this fantastic hotel that I'm presenting in. And again, Perplexity is able to scrape a different bunch of news articles and market reports and give me a very detailed response regarding who actually owns that property. But I wanted to take it a little bit further. So I said, what other properties does News City Properties actually own in Georgia? And it was able to, again, it scraped different LinkedIn posts. It scraped some CoStar news reports. I think I saw it scraped even some, relevant local business journals. And it built me a dossier about all the different properties that this company owns just in this particular market. And so, as Jackie said, it's not just a good tool for commercial real estate research. It could be a fantastic tool for financial research, any kind of market intel where you need to get in the loop really, really quickly, but you need to be able to trust the information that you're being provided. Perplexity is a fantastic tool for that. So I've seen people use it to research properties, research markets. If you're vetting a tenant or vetting some kind of company for an investment decision, you can look into their publicly displayed financials online. You can see how many stores a potential retailer has opened over the past 6 months. It is a fantastic tool to synthesize a lot of information using AI very, very quickly. And so the next recent feature that I like to bring up is the concept of deep research. And when I think of deep research, again, Perplexity is kind of AI that's purpose built for searching the internet, but it's kind of purpose built for doing a general search of the internet. When you think of deep research, it's AI powered search on steroids. It allows you to tell it very specifically, I want you to search these specific publications published in this area, published in this date range for X. And X could be whatever you want. In commercial real estate, it could be, please look for news articles in this specific area that mention multifamily owners that have recently changed hands, with their properties, and just kind of see who's moving and shaking, who's transacting in a market. Or it could be, I want to find key indicators of companies that are likely to make some type of investment decision over the next 6 months. And the reason I like to bring this up is I'm sure this is true in finance and across acquisitions as well. Every high producing broker that I've ever worked with has some sort of sauce for reading the news and spotting opportunities for deals. And you can effectively give that criteria that you're looking for to deep research and return a list of all those opportunities for deals. So in this particular example, I just asked it, please research newspaper articles published in the last 6 months in Southern California that mention local retailers that have somehow indicated they're likely to expand. And so it's searching every single news publication it can find that matches that criteria, that mentions local retailers that somehow said, hey, we're hiring new people, or hey, we're opening new locations, or maybe we made a new investment, or we've acquired a new company. And again, it's returning me a list of all those potential retailers that are likely to expand in the market. And so again, it's just like AI powered search. There's a million different ways you could use it. You could use it to vet tenants. You could use it to find potential tenants. You could use it to source potential off-market deals. Whatever criteria you're typically looking for when you're reading the news in public business journals, you can provide that criteria to something like deep research and scour the internet on whatever articles and publications meet those criteria to return you essentially a list of opportunities to make deals and hopefully make some money. So I love bringing up deep research because every broker I've ever worked for or worked with has had some kind of sauce for doing that. And now you can do it very, very quickly using some of these different AI tools that are out there. And so, something that I always like to mention when I'm talking about the topic of AI powered search is that this kind of technology really cuts both ways. You folks have probably seen this before. Perplexity and different tools like it are working so well that Google has started rolling out AI generated search results in its own search algorithms. And so what does that mean? It means very soon you're not going to have to be an AI aficionado to start doing all of these different kinds of market research using AI. It's just going to be happening using the tools that people are using every single day. And so that makes AI powered search and things like deep research a very incredible tool for you to do different kinds of market research and spot opportunities, but it also makes it a very valuable tool for your clients. And so if you're used to getting clients by people finding your website because they're searching for different kinds of market intel, and maybe they stumble upon a market report that you and your team or your company worked so hard on, all of a sudden, Google's just going to start taking different pieces of your market report and your competitor's market report and their competitor's market report and serving it up to your clients on a silver platter. They might never see your face or your name or your brand or even know that you spent so much time putting together this detailed resource for them. And so I don't bring this up to scare anybody, but, again, given you folks are, fiduciaries of, the investments and the financial security of the firms that you're working with, essentially a lot of the ways that people are used to getting clients in these different businesses is slowly getting deleted because of the ability that people have to access different kinds of market intel using AI. And so it's something that cuts both ways. It's not something that is absolutely going to destroy businesses overnight, but it's something that everyone who's making key business decisions needs to be aware of so that you can stay ahead of it. And so on that topic, another somewhat recent development that I like to bring up is the concept of creating videos using images using AI. And honestly, you could do this for a while now, but the reason that it stays under my recent development section is it gets easier and easier and easier to do this every week. When I was giving these presentations a year and a half ago, you could take an image and turn it into a video using AI, but it didn't look very good. It was very difficult to do. The platforms were very wonky. Now it is incredibly easy to take an image of a property or whatever you're trying to market and turn it into a video in under 60 seconds. And it's so easy to do. It's honestly not even worth me giving a demonstration of how to do it. All you need to do is check out a platform called Runway ML. And within 60 seconds, you could upload an image of a property or, again, whatever you're trying to market, and just tell it in a simple sentence what you want to be happening in the video. And within 60 seconds, it's going to create a video that you can use to put on social media, put on your website, put in your email marketing, that's actually going to get in front of your target audience, stop the scroll, and get them to engage with your content. And so the reason that I like to bring this up is I think it's relevant for all businesses. And the way that people access information is changing in light of these different AI tools. It just is. And so the traffic that people are used to getting to their websites and finding clients because people are looking for market intel, that's just changing. The way that people access that information is just getting easier to do. But your ability, maybe not you personally if you work in finance, but the companies that you work with to generate content that proactively gets in front of your target audience, that is also changing at an even more accelerated rate. And it's getting easier and easier to do. And so, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, Topher, I don't really have to market properties. Why would I want to take an image and turn it into a real estate marketing video? That's not the only way that you can use this technology. This is an example of a social media post from a commercial real estate broker named Reed Bennett. He made this visual using ChatGPT, and he turned this into a social media post that got 159 likes and over 68 comments. And so I'm not a LinkedIn algorithm specialist by any means, but I can tell you that this social media post, that maybe if it was just text, it would have got a couple of likes and a couple of comments. Instead, this post got in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of people because he made it more engaging using some of these different AI tools. And so this is something I think is relevant across all industries, but it's specifically relevant in commercial real estate, where you actually need to get these properties in front of people and get people to know what you're talking about. You need to tell a story so that they're actually interested in what you're selling and so that they actually engage with you. So that's it for most of the recent developments in AI. There's one more that I'll show you in a second, but I like to take a quick break here just to touch on this topic of, hey, what can AI actually do for me? Because at the end of every presentation, at least one person raises their hand and asks that. They say, this is my title, this is what I do, what can AI actually do for me? The truth is, it depends 100% on who you are and what kind of organization that you're working with. I do consulting with commercial real estate firms that have over 300 people working with them. Their priorities and their pain points that they're trying to solve with AI are vastly different from what we're trying to do at Aspire Commercial, where we have almost 20 people. And those priorities are even more different from, the Bolus company, where I was working with a team of 50 people. And that's just on the organization level. It becomes even more nuanced when you're talking about, hey, how can AI help me personally? A lot of people in commercial real estate, and I'm sure you feel this way in finance as well, they feel like they're this person on the left. They're just kind of drowning in minutia. They're putting together market reports. They're reading financial reports. They're trying to liaise with clients and their key stakeholders, and they're just kind of drowning in work. If you're feeling this way, some of these AI tools, they can make you feel like these people on the right, like you have a team of people. You have a team of people that can help you with marketing. You have a team of people that can help you with synthesizing and extracting some of this financial information from your financial reports. But if you already have that team of people, it's not that AI can't help you with your workflows. It's just going to help you in very different ways. I did a consulting session with an executive who led an acquisitions team of 12 people. I showed him a bunch of these tools and they said, Topher, those tools are great, but this presentation is really meant for the people on my team. Could you do a presentation for them? I just want AI to help me get through my email. And so there are tools for that as well. So how AI can actually help you, it's not going to be every single thing that I'm talking about today, but based on your work, who you're working with and what your role is within an organization and who that organization is, that's going to dictate how you can put some of these different tools to work. Now, so the last recent development I like to touch on in this section of the presentation is something called Notebook LM. So before I give the full-blown spiel on what Notebook LM is, just out of curiosity, has anybody on the call used Notebook LM before? Awesome. Well, you don't have to unmute yourself if you don't want, but how are you using Notebook LM?
So I'd actually taken some courses on AI and things like that, and there's a lot of information that I learned right at the end of it. So what I did was I took certain specific sets of materials, put it in Notebook LM, and now I can go back and just ask it questions, right? And I've done that with a few other sets of documents, I've had with not private client data, but just other information, my own, for example, Excel spreadsheets or things like that. You can put it in there, and then you can literally just ask it questions to summarize, to go back to points and everything else. So it's actually incredibly useful, and it gives you direct references to the document where it pulled the information from. So it's actually really cool.
Awesome, man. That was such a great summarization. I don't know if I even need to give the demonstration now, but that's essentially what it is. It's, you know, when I think about AI, and again, you have tools that are kind of general purpose tools, and then you have very purpose built tools. Notebook LM is essentially AI that's built to be trained only on the information that you give it access to. So again, thinking about something like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is trained on the entire history of the internet. It's trained on every YouTube video that exists. That is a lot of information to sort through when you're trying to get detailed responses and information from it. And so with Notebook LM, you can essentially train an AI assistant that's trained and grounded only in the information that you're providing to it. And so, sorry, I was just looking for your name, Natick, if that's how you say it. That was a great summary, but here's a quick demonstration of just one way that you might be able to use Notebook LM for learning a commercial real estate, or probably learning a particular local financial market. So in this particular example, I'm going back to Perplexity, and I'm telling it to pull me market reports for Norfolk, Virginia. That's a place where I actually just recently gave a presentation. And so again, it's already building me a really great market report. But I want to get in the nitty gritty here. So I'm going to take each of these market reports and I'm going to provide them to Notebook LM. And within a couple of minutes, I'm going to have my own personal AI assistant that is trained on nothing but the information in these specific market reports. And so now I can just ask it, tell me everything that I need to know about the Norfolk, Virginia office market. And keep in mind, these are market reports about every different commercial subsector in this market, but I can now go to this AI assistant and say, hey, just provide me what I need to know about the office market. And just what Natick said, it's going to go through, it's going to give me all this information. And just like Perplexity, it's going to provide me citations of where it actually got that information in these market reports. And so it's a fantastic tool to learn a lot of information really quickly, or like what Natick is doing, he's already learned the information, but he wants to go back to reference it. And you don't really have to worry about it making stuff up because it's providing you sources for all that information. And again, there's a multitude of different ways you could use this technology in commercial real estate or in finance, whatever you're working with. But again, if you're thinking about just how can I digest a lot of information quickly, I'm going to the custom audio feature and I'm telling it to create me a podcast that summarizes the office sector in Norfolk, Virginia, based off of these commercial real estate market updates. And if you hit generate, literally, I sped up this video, but within a couple of minutes.
So true. Commercial real estate isn't just one big market. Different sectors like office space tell their own unique stories. Class A asking rates, those top tier.
It's going to build you a custom tailored podcast around all the information that you're trying to learn and get information from. And so say you need to get in the loop on some particular financial market really quickly. You don't necessarily have time to, dial in and read all these different market reports before your call. You can literally create a podcast out of the information and listen to it in the car while you're on the way to your next meeting. And so I've seen people leverage Notebook LM to, build databases of different property information. Again, you want to be careful about what kinds of proprietary information that you're uploading, because there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you're using the free version, they are essentially going to be training their models on your data. But if you have the paid version, their privacy statements stipulate that they don't do that. And so I've seen people create, different notebooks for specific properties that they're working on. And now they can go into that notebook and say, hey, provide me a renewal schedule for all the different lease agreements in this building. And they're able to pull that information extremely quickly and know that all the information is grounded only in their documents and nothing but their documents. And so I think I saw a raised hand. Do we have a question from Craig?
Yes, you do. Sorry, I needed to unmute. So in the example, you loaded documents and I'm mispronounced your name. Sorry about that.
Oh,
You
it's all
loaded
good.
documents into Notebook, but can you tell Notebook to go out and search market reports for New England or Norfolk on the office? Sorry, I'm getting a reader.
Can you folks see my browser window that I have open right now? So I literally did this the other day. I'll show you how it works. It might not happen right while we're on the call, but I was interested. This is kind of a personal use case, but I was interested in buying a cellular signal booster for my house. So I said cellular signal booster buyer guides, and I submitted that, and it essentially goes through and it's going to look for all these different buyer guides that detail different cellular signal boosters. And if there's certain ones you want to include, you can include the ones you want. You can unselect ones that you don't want to include. You hit import, and it automatically imports those sources and starts training your notebook on them. And then, normally I'm giving this presentation live, and so I don't do as much of a deep dive on Notebook, but say you have different information on, how to create financial models, or some different, maybe books on, best practices in finance. I know an appraiser that has all these different appraisal guideline books loaded into his Notebook LM. And when he wants to do something with AI based on a specific appraisal framework, he will just highlight that one specific source that he's looking for and say, give me I forget what the framework's called, but give me a detailed summary of a market analysis framework. And then it will provide the framework based on the text that he trained his notebook on. And then he will take that framework and go to ChatGPT and say, please provide me a prompt to complete this market summary analysis using ChatGPT Deep Research. And then it'll give that prompt to ChatGPT Deep Research. So again, a lot of these tools are purpose-built, and the more you use the purpose-built tools for what they're built for, the better output you'll get. But you can stack some of these different tools together to do some pretty incredible things. So great question, Craig. So let's see where we were here. So again, those were all fairly recent developments in AI, and we're already at 10:40. So I'm starting to run out of time here, but we'll get into some financial meat in a second. But how can you stay ahead of the curve with AI when it's moving so fast? You got to do exactly what Natick is doing. You just pick the handful of tools that you think will be useful to you in your business, and you learn how to put them to work. And that could either be through a course, it could be through a presentation like this, but primarily it has to happen through experimentation. You got to try them out. You got to see the tools that you think are going to save you time, and then experiment with them to see if they actually save you time. So let's keep talking about different ways that we can save you time. So I'll touch on this really quickly, but I'm going to kind of speed through it so we don't run out of time. But I like to touch on what I think about as far as the 3 different levels of success with AI are concerned. And so level 1 is kind of exactly what we just talked about. You got to test and experiment. You got to find some of these different tools that you think will save you time and actually see if they save you time. Because if it takes you twice as much time to fact check something from AI as it does to just do it yourself, it's probably not a great use of using AI. But if you try enough things, you'll eventually find a bunch of different use cases that actually save you time in your various workflows. And so the second level, this is what we'll talk about next, is customizing AI to work for you. And so a lot of these different tools, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, you can create your own customized versions of them to execute very specific tasks. And so that saves you time, because if you put together a magic prompt that finally got ChatGPT to abstract a lease for you, or maybe read some kind of financial report, you don't have to worry about memorizing that prompt. You just go to that customized instance of your ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using, and it already knows what you want it to do. And we'll go through some examples in a second. And then the final step is strategic automation. And so the way I think about it is, if you can customize AI to consistently execute a task for you, there's a good chance that you can automate it so that you never even need to open AI. Something triggers the automation and you just get an email with AI's output. But if you want to do that, there's some upfront work that has to happen first. You need to be able to map out how is your process working now without AI and automation. Then you need to make some decisions. Hey, what do we want to trigger this automation? Maybe it happens every time I get a specific email or every time I put a specific document in a specific folder. And then you need to figure out what you actually want AI to do. And then you need to figure out where that output is going to go. And maybe it's as simple as, hey, AI sends you an email or a Slack notification when it gives you the output. Or maybe it's, hey, I'm extracting a bunch of information from these financial reports and I want it to map it to these different locations in my database. So the third step is definitely the hardest because you need to be you need to be able to understand what you're doing now before you can automate AI to do it for you. But if you start by testing and experimenting, and then you can customize AI to consistently execute a task for you, you'll be on a much better footing to actually understand what AI can do for you and then begin to start automating it. So let's talk about some of these customizations. If you folks want, I am going to be flying through these next couple of demonstrations, but if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to my newsletter. And if you pop in your email address, it will automatically send you an email with a bunch of step-by-step tutorials on how to use a bunch of these different tools. A lot of them are a little more commercial real estate marketing focused, but there is a 20-minute step-by-step video on how to create a custom GPT, which is what we'll talk about next. So to introduce custom GPTs, I typically like to talk about drafting marketing copy. And I know that might not be super relevant to you, but it's just a really good example of what a customized instance of AI can do. And so again, when you think about these customized AI tools, you can give them very specific instructions so that when you get to that instance of the tool, it already knows what you want it to do. And so that saves you time because you don't have to worry about remembering your 8-paragraph prompt, but it also makes it much easier to leverage AI across a team because you can share that custom GPT with somebody and they don't have to be an AI expert level wizard like Natick to get AI to do something. They can just open that custom GPT and it already knows what they want it to do. So it probably sounds a little abstract, but I'll give you a couple examples here. So the first one we'll go through is one that I created called Real Estate Writer Pro. And essentially, I'm going to go to Real Estate Writer Pro and tell it, we're selling a property at 341 4th Street. And so I'm going to give it a handful of bullet points, and I'm actually going to give it a photo of the property. And what it's going to do is it's going to scour the internet for as many relevant details as it can find about this specific property. And then it's going to analyze the photo and pull out even more details about this property. And it's going to draft me a really robust marketing description in seconds. You know, this is, you know, kind of boilerplate ChatGPT stuff at this point, but it's still pretty incredible that you can just give it the information and get it to do something for you without a magic prompt. But I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to upload an example of one of the brochures that I like and say, hey, now just draft the marketing copy for this entire document from top to bottom. And so it's going to take that marketing description that it put together, and it's going to draft our marketing document using all the same components, using the same style, using the same tone of voice, and the same general length as the document that I uploaded it. And so, you know, I do like to kind of add a note to this. I'm aware that this isn't a super flashy demonstration. You know, with all the stuff you can do with AI these days, adding a PDF to ChatGPT and having it spit out text for a marketing document, it's not necessarily a flashy way to demonstrate what AI can do. But what I love about these AI tools is they don't have to be flashy. They just need to somehow save you time so that you can use that time leaning into the activities that actually generate more money. So you could use this for marketing documents, but if you have letters that you send to clients, if you have introductions to market reports or financial reports that you send to clients, this is a fantastic way to customize AI to do a lot of your writing for you very quickly. based off your existing writing templates that you can provide to AI. So let's talk about a couple more ways that you can use AI to save time. So keeping with the theme of custom GPTs, again, there's a couple different things that you can do with these custom GPTs, and you can make them on the majority of major LLMs that are out there now. You can make them on Gemini, you can make them on ChatGPT, you can make them on Claude. But the two specific things you can do is you can point them in a specific direction to execute a very specific task, and you can give them access to different data or different documents or different information so that it can leverage those materials while it's executing this task. And so, again, it probably sounds a little bit abstract, but here's just a handful of examples of what you might be able to do with a custom GPT. So here's the commercial lease summarizer that I built. And again, I've given it such detailed instructions that I don't need to actually worry about providing it a prompt. I can just upload the lease agreement, hit the button, and it already knows all the detailed information that I want to pull out of this lease agreement. And so if I wanted someone else in my firm to be able to do this, they don't have to know how to use ChatGPT to summarize a lease. They can just upload the document, click the button, and it's going to do it for them. Another example, and if you work in the development arena, or if you're working with people on different real estate acquisitions, this might be helpful to you. I created a custom GPT that has access to the City of Portland, Maine's zoning ordinance. So this is a very common problem in brokerage. Nobody likes to flip through a 200-page zoning ordinance to find out what they can actually do with a building. And so I uploaded the zoning ordinance to the back of a custom GPT, and now you can just ask it, what are the specific zones where I'm allowed to do self-storage? And it's going to rifle through that 200-page document, and it's going to build me a dossier on all the different zones where I can actually execute this specific property use case. So those are a couple more kind of boilerplate commercial real estate examples, but I'll show you a couple ways that I've used it or that I've built for other people that are a little more finance focused. So this is a custom GPT that I built on Gemini. And the reason I built it on Gemini is probably the best LLM out there for reading scanned documents. And the reason we created this particular custom GPT is we were having some problems with our overseas team creating our invoices. They would get something wrong. You know, it's kind of difficult to read a 20-page lease agreement and understand all the nuances when you're kind of new to commercial real estate. And so we created this custom GPT to essentially check their work. So what I can do with this custom GPT is I can upload a lease agreement, and it's going to go through and it's going to find me all the financial information that it needs to create our invoice. And so part of the trouble with doing these live demonstrations is it doesn't always work exactly how you think it will. But the first step is it's going through the lease agreement and it's finding out whether or not it actually has all the information to generate this invoice. And what it's realizing is, hey, I don't have all the information. I need your commissionable rate. I need to know what you're billing on. I need to know your payment terms. And so I'm just going to tell it 6%, base rent only, and 50/50. And so now what it's going to do is it's going to extract all the relevant tenant and the building information. It's going to extract all of the commissionable information, you know, all the rent schedules that it needs in order to put this information together. It's going to do a little bit of light math, which you got to be careful with because AI is not always the best at doing math, but it's going to build out the rent table based on the rent schedule and what the tenant's being charged for that particular space on a monthly basis. It's going to find the total commissionable amount, and it's going to multiply that by our commission rate and give me the total that is due for this commission. And then next, finally, it's going to apply our payment terms and tell us exactly what we need to invoice for in this particular lease scenario. So again, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, Topher, creating an invoice, you know, using AI is not a very exciting use case. That's kind of the point. You know, no one in our company necessarily had the skills or the time to be checking the work of the people creating these invoices for us. And so we created a custom version of an AI tool that could do that work for us. And if we open up the invoice that was created and we compare it to this, and there's a disconnect between the two, it means either, hey, this was so confusing that AI got it wrong, or so confusing that our person got it wrong, and someone from our team needs to jump in and verify this information before we send out this invoice. So that's just one example, but let's talk about using AI more on the investment side. And again, this is where things get a little tricky, because I talk to people in commercial real estate all day long that want to use AI to underwrite deals. And again, AI is not always the best at doing math or really doing any kind of financial analysis. But part of what's useful with these custom GPTs is you can break these workflows into very specific steps. And if you break the workflows into very specific steps, all of a sudden, it's more capable at executing light financial analysis and light kinds of math, because it's not trying to do a giant multi-step workflow all at once. It's going to do step one, it's going to check in with you, it's going to do step two, it's going to check in with you, and it's less likely to get confused because it's not trying to read a giant agreement to pull out all the information and do this various math at once. So we might not get through this entire example because we're going to start running out of time, and I want to make sure there's time for questions. But in this particular example, this is a fairly simple GPT with complex instructions. I've built this GPT so that I can upload an investment deck for an investment syndication group, and it's essentially going to run through. It is going to pull out all the relevant information from this investment deck, and then it's going to compare it against the investment information for an investment that they've already purchased. And so the idea is, this is the first step. It's asking me which one I want it to analyze, because now it has access to two different decks. So I'm saying Parkside Terrace. And, essentially the way that they're able to use this is for top level underwriting and due diligence. Would I tell someone to make a buy or no buy decision in, using an AI tool to underwrite their deals? Absolutely not. You're going to want a human involved at that step. You're probably going to want a human involved in various, spaces along your kind of due diligence journey. But if you want to analyze a deal and see how it compares to a deal that you've actually purchased in the past, that's something that AI is actually fairly capable of doing. And so there's actually like 5 different steps to this workflow. I'm going to skip some of them so that we run out of time. We don't run out of time, but I'm just going to say skip to step 5. And in step 5, it's going to go through and it's going to take out all this information that it's extracted, which it usually would include the rent comparables, the sales comparables, essentially what is the value add strategy behind this specific investment. And it's going to compare it against an investment that this particular group has already purchased in the past. And so they can see how this investment actually stacks up against something they would actually consider buying. So again, you want to be careful when you're getting AI to try to do, very detailed mathematics and financial analysis, because A, there's only so many things that it can do. B, if you try to get it to do too much stuff at once, it's going to get confused and it's going to fail. But you can use some of these custom GPTs to break a workflow up into very specific steps. And then it's much more likely to give you a reliable, consistent output because it's not getting so confused. And so I realize we're running out of time here, but I'll give you one more example of how you might be able to automate one of these workflows. And in this particular automation, I essentially created an automation to automate our invoice generator GPT. And so I'll kind of explain how it works as it's going through it. But the trigger in this automation is going to be, it's going to fire up anytime someone uploads a lease agreement to our project management platform. And then it's going to break out the entire process into steps. And so first, it's going to pull out the general building information. Next, it's going to pull out the information that it needs to create the rent table. Next, it's going to pull out our commissionable rate which also lives in our project management platform. And so again, the fact that this is all tied into the systems that we're using, that enables it to access all the different information that it needs to execute this task. And so finally, it's just going to create a document with all this information we need in our invoice, and it's going to send it to me via email. And so you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, Topher, that's great. It gave you the document, but that doesn't look very pretty. We don't really need it to look pretty. You know, like this is just our specific process. We're not having it complete an entire invoice that we're actually going to send out to a client. This is essentially a quality control step. We want to use AI to check the information that our team has used to create these invoices. And if AI gets it wrong or the person gets it wrong, we're going to know because there's going to be a disconnect between the two. And then we know that someone from our senior team needs to crack open that lease and see why this is so confusing. So I had a couple more examples that I'd be happy to show you guys, but I know we're running out of time. So I'm happy to open it up to questions and tell you anything that I know.